Both self-employed and salaried can claim rent expenses. I have simplified these into step-by-step process. For the salaried employees who has HRA as its component, Rule 2A applies, and for self-employed and salaried with no HRA, it's Section 80 GG, both of which I am going to be covering in this video. Before I discuss for self-employed, shall we look at the process for salaried employees with HRA? What is Rule 2A? This is the rule which decides how much house rent allowance you can claim. As per this rule, least of 3 would be considered for HRA exemption. Number 1, actual HRA received. Number 2, 50% of salary if living in metro cities, that is Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata and Chennai, and 40% of non-metro cities. Number 3, rent paid minus 10% of salary. For the sake of HRA calculation, salary includes only basic salary, dearness allowance and commission based on fixed percentage of turnover achieved by an employee. Confused? Don't worry. Look at this sample payslip. Here the basic salary is 40,000, DA is 4,000 and HRA is 20,000. And let's say I pay a rent of 15,000 per month and I stay in Bangalore. So as per Rule 2A that I discussed, HRA received, that is number 1, would be 2,40,000 per annum, and the second 40% of my salary, which is basic salary and dearness allowance, that comes to 5,28,000. So 40% of 5,28,000 comes to 2,11,200 for a non-metro city, which is Bangalore. Now coming to the third, that is rent paid minus 10% of salary. Rent paid would be 1,80,000, considering 15,000 is what I pay, and 10% of salary comes to 52,800. So the answer is 1,27,200. Now considering these 3 limits, hence I can claim a maximum exemption of only 1,27,200 in this case, and the balance 1,12,800, that is the rent HRA that I received, 2,40,000 minus 1,27,200 will be fully taxable. Let's quickly look at the process of claiming this HRA. Step 1. You have to provide rent receipts and rent agreement plus your landlord PAN if needed to your employer to declare your HRA exemption. This investment proof declaration generally takes place between Jan to March of a financial year. That's when your employer asks you to fill in a form called 12BB. For example, for the financial year 23 and 24, you must have already submitted your declaration form, and this gets reflected in your Form 16, which helps you to claim HRA deduction while filing your ITR. Step 2. Make sure the house rent allowance and the exemption is reflecting in your Form 16. Now claim this deduction in your ITR form under Section 10 subsection 13A, which would be shown under the exemption column. And to be eligible to claim house rent allowance, there are certain conditions that are required. First condition is you should be a salaried individual. So self-employed business cannot apply for this exemption. The second, you must have HRA component as part of your CTC. You should be living in a rented house. That is the third condition. And the fourth would be you should be paying the rent. Now, coming to the self-employed and salaried with no HRA component. This is part of Section 80 GG and applies for self-employed individuals and the salaried who does not have HRA as part of their salary component. Here, there is one condition that is not there in HRA, that is the assessee must file declaration form number 10BA online. Now let's see how to do this. Log into your e-filing income tax portal, click on e-file, click on income tax forms. Under that, click on file income tax forms and then select persons not dependent on any source of income. Here you will find form 10BA. Please note that this is not available, that is, this deduction is or the exemption under HRA is not available in new tax regime. Let's see how the section 80GG decides the limit of your rent expenses. The least of the following is allowed for deduction. Number 1, 25% of adjusted total income. So what I mean by adjusted total income, this includes all your income excluding long-term capital gains, short-term capital gains under section 111A and income under section 115A or 115D, and deductions under section 80C to 80U, that also includes deduction under this section, that is 80GG. The second, rent paid minus 10% of adjusted total income. This adjusted total income is the same as what I explained few seconds back. That is long-term capital gain, short-term capital gain, section 111A, and also the deductions including this deduction, that is 80GG. Third option, 60,000 per annum. Now let's see a couple of questions that my client asked me regarding this. The first question, can I claim HRA if I live with my parents? Yes, absolutely. But you must have a rental agreement and pay rent to your parents. Second, what happens if I don't submit rent receipts to my employer? Your employer may not provide HRA exemption, but you can still claim your HRA while filing your income tax return, provided you have the rent receipts and rental agreement. Third question, can both spouses claim HRA separately? Like I said, one of the conditions to claim is that you should be actually paying the rent, and if both of you are paying rent and have HRA as part of your salary, then yes, you can claim. Fourth question, when is the landlord PAN required to be submitted to my employer? The rule that talks about the submission of landlord's PAN for HRA exemption is again Rule 2A. This rule mandates that if your annual rent paid exceeds 1 lakh per annum, that employee must provide the PAN of the landlord to the employer. So if the landlord does not have a PAN, or if he does not provide you the PAN, a declaration to this effect from the landlord must be submitted. This ensures that HRA exemption is processed correctly. Fifth question, I own a house in Delhi, but I live in a rented residence in Bangalore. Can I claim a deduction under section 80GG? Answer, one of the conditions of 80GG is that you, your spouse or your minor child should not own a residential accommodation at the place where you reside or where you perform the office duties or conduct your business. In this case, yes, you can claim a deduction under section 80GG under old tax regime for the rent you are paying, since you do not own any house in Bangalore. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment in the comment section and we will try our best to address it. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.